of the CMC family, the CMC tradition. And this evening, we're not only honoring for those 2 decades plus, but also for 15 years of devotion, leadership, and struggle that has molded CMCAA into the best alumni association in the nation. I'm proud to say that this evening because if you look at the calendar of events, or if you just look back a couple of years at the calendar of events, you'll see that not only do we have more than just the annual homecoming or fundraising type activities, but we have upwards of 50 events that cater to alum or involve alum in some way with the college. And for that we owe a debt of gratitude to George Van Tubergen. This evening, beyond his contributions in the area of just bringing alumni back to the college, we're honoring a man who inspired a generation of alum to go beyond self. He gave us an opportunity to believe that one person can make a difference. CMCAA, probably more than any other organization of its type, involves our alum as early and as often as possible. And I guess if I were to take a refrain from a popular song from about the time when George started with CMCAA, it was by Joni Mitchell, I believe. Don't it always seem to go that you don't realize what you've got till it's gone? Well, those of us who came through CMC and who participate in CMC activities realize what we've got and who we have, and tonight we're going to try to see if we can get Mr. George Van Tubergen to stay just a little bit longer. And with that, I'd like to invite Breck McKinley to come to the mic and take over here.
George took on a certain worried look. I mean, don't worry, they just said just do whatever you did for Jack Stark. And but you should be warned that I've come in from out of town, and I understand that all hitmen come in from out of town. Either way, it's up to me to set the tone tonight. The last time I had the honor of being the Master of Ceremonies at a CMC event. I remember that joke. I'm not going to tell that joke. There's some people who aren't here tonight, I understand, just because I told that joke. But that was during the last U.S. Senate campaign. I ran one of the great anonymous Senate campaigns of all time. In fact, when I was finally ready to concede the election to Alan Cranston, I couldn't find anybody who cared. But I want you to know that I actually never did concede. And considering Cranston's current problems, this may have been my best political move yet. But at any rate, we should go on for tonight. Now, I can't say I didn't warn you, Van. I told you $20,000 in unmarked bills or the truth would come out. You left me no choice. I'm sure most of you came here tonight thinking we would be canonizing a man, or at least a saint, and I have it from a good source that you are seen that way. And we certainly know of Van as and agree that he's a hard worker, he's loyal to the school, certainly loyal to his president, Jack Stark, self-effacing, all the good things that one expects of a saint. And I certainly shared this view, I want you to know. But I felt that it was my responsibility to at least make an effort to do more than just parrot the general agreements. I wanted to be able to share with you at least a glimpse of the whole man. The man behind the public face that we all know and love.
Oh, Breck,
Little did I know what I would find. It pains me to have to share it with you, but noblesse oblige. It was a difficult task, I want to tell you. It was, how do you find out? People were afraid to talk to me. I mean, they're terrified of the man. His iron-fisted control of the alumni office and those closest to him made it impossible to get at the truth. Although I will say that Pat did let it slip that Van was a very suspicious person and said nothing was safe on her desk. And yes, Van, we do know that you saw the reference to a gift on her desk, and it's right here in this bag. because I realized that I was going to have to bring high science into this activity. I needed to turn to the science of garbology. This is an arcane branch of archaeology. It's used by the CIA and other intelligence gathering groups who find out the truth about people by going through their garbage. So I thought, well, Van is leaving. Van will be cleaning out his office. Let's see what he throws out. What might he not dare take home? What failed dreams or schemes or plots might his cast-offs tell us about the real George Van Tubergen? Night after night, I personally staked out the trash container next to Van's office. Finally, just 2 nights ago, I saw him carrying out this very bag of trash. And I'm sure you'll be as stunned as I was by its content. Here's the man with only one ambition, to serve others.
Please don't show them Dolly Parton's false.
I miss those, but not much else. So, you know, with a man whose ambition was only to serve others, CMC's own Chief Daryl Gates, how could anyone have known that he was really the Saddam Hussein of the academic community? Of course, I'm the first to admit that there may be a simple explanation. Now, for instance, we have some treasures here. You might be able to explain these. This seems to be an executive desk fiddler. Perhaps you could pass that over to Ben. And then, I mean, I have no explanation for some of these things. This I was particularly touched by. I don't quite understand it. Somehow, it's hard to do this with one hand loose here, but somehow I have a picture of Van brandishing this in the office. But I think you'd agree that's really quite innocent. I certainly thought it was innocent. Things got a little tougher, though, as we got a little farther in here. This isn't Dolly Parton's falsies, but I don't know exactly. Oh yes, there's this. But none of that really made sense until I came across it. Again, though, excuse me, I'm a little warm.
You think you're warm?
Then I began to come across interesting doodling. That's all I could think of. Because I found this CBC, but one of group did that be CBC. What could that be? Then I came across Time for a Change. Then I came across Van's Army. What makes sense out of that? Then I came across man's ambition knows no bounds. But the real mystery to me remained, what on earth could the CDC be all about?
funny people up here. I'm sorry that I had to be the serious side of the year. But to show that my heart's in the right place, if not my shirt. The Alumni Award, which I don't know what you would be told it was, but there was a certain object of your wardrobe that we all learned to love and just look forward to. And it disappeared, and we knew that you probably were devastated. So we sent representatives out to all the gift shops in California to see if we couldn't find it. And Van, I'm happy to tell you that it's here tonight, and that in case you thought it was permanently lost, I've got your old green sport coat. Now, many of you may not remember this, but I remember it well. This is what I associate with Ben, and they told me it was gone forever, so you just pass it on. And from the heartfelt thanks of the Alumni Association. At any rate, now onward and upward and back to the program. Oh, I also have this for you in case, I'm going to give you the t-shirt. I wasn't planning to keep that. This is your band in your office. That was later at Claremont and Tubergen College. All right. The next innocent to come up here is the first of many testimonials this evening is from John Keats. So if John Keats would come up, we'll continue with this.
It's been said that alumni are penance for an institution's sins. I never fully appreciated that until dinner this evening. I was told that today was Day of the Races, and I understand that was it Santa Anita, John, that the alumni visited? I understand that there were some dramatic winnings. I understand that the president, I want to be sure I have this sequence right, and Russ and Breck, it's important, I think, for you to practice carefully. The president of the Alumni Association purchased a ticket for the director of alumni relations. Is that true?
Yes.
Now, could this be characterized as a long shot? Is Alan Balch in any way associated with this? And did this source come in? I rest my case. So, if there are representatives from the Foothill Division who burst in tonight and take away guest of honor, you'll all appreciate the circumstances. And alumni, we extend our thanks and gratitude to you all. I was alarmed to learn a couple of weeks ago from an alumnus that after Van's trip to Euromeet next month, he was going off to for a few weeks to visit his ancestral home in Scotland. Now, I'm not much of an ethnologist. Indeed, I don't know a beetle from a Scotsman, or is that an entomologist? But I've never heard of a Scottish clan called Van Tubergen. I've heard of the Campbells, and I've heard of the McDonalds, I've heard of the Murrays and the McTavishes. I've heard of the McLeods. But Cliff, was this a night to come out? I really Would you point out that sporan that's in front of your tilt? Where's the rest of that rabbit?
I think we ate it.
But I've never heard of the Van Tubergens, Van Tubergen clan. So being of an inquisitive turn of mind, and I said inquisitive, Russ, not acquisitive. I thought I'd look into this matter. You can imagine my surprise, and my research did yield the fact that there is indeed, in those remote highland lands, a rumor, vague, unsubstantiated, of a lost clan. Researchers from Scotland come back with reports confused because the only water is not potable, and there's a brownish liquid that they drink out of jugs. Natives and academics come back confused. I don't know. Evidently, there was a clan, though, regarded with some suspicion by the other clans in these lands, and I'm sad to report, too, with considerable resentment. The suspicion was easy to understand. First, while the other local clans were distinguished by their kilts McLeod notwithstanding here. Members of the Clan Van Tubergen wore wooden clogs. It seemed that while other clans wore tartans with gold clad designs, Clan Van Tubergen had a tartan which the image apparently of a windmill. Natives ate haggis, the Van Tubergens ate herring. Some clans marched off to war with heather in their bonnets. The Van Tubergens ran off to war with tulips in their bonnets. And then there are these unsubstantiated reports of a language barrier. Apparently the Van Tubergens spoke with a strange brogue. Now, all of this could explain, I think, the suspicion which fellow Scots might have regarded this lost tribe, this lost clan Van Tubergen, but they could hardly explain the resentment that this clan engendered. Then I discovered the source of this resentment, a habit of speech conspicuous among the clan Van Tubergen that drove other clans to despair. Indeed, it was a habit of speech that ultimately led to the driving out of this clan from their lands. This characteristic, as common as the lantern jaws of the Habsburgs were, the red hair among the Plantagenets, the poverty among the Keats family. This habit was an addiction to the pun. Discovery, I had some deep doubts about the fact that there could have been a Van Tubergen clan, but this obviously, staring this fact in the face, my skepticism evaporated. Is there a man, or indeed is there a woman among us here, who has not threatened Van himself with expulsion after being exposed to one of his puns? It was Van who referred to the Berkey seed catalog the other day as Reader's Digest. He claimed that Van's quail was a party animus. And when the Gulf War broke out, he called and asked me if it was not Saudi duty time. There's no doubt that there is a clan Van Tubergen. That Van is its tribal chief. And that his ancestral home is wherever he chooses to make it. Now, if every one of us can be Irish on St. Patrick's Day, we can all be Scottish this evening when we contemplate the enormous difference that Van and Betty have made in the lives of each of us into this remarkable college. Please note, I said we can all be Scottish this evening. Please don't be Scottish when the Alumni Fund pledge. I want to give you an opportunity to come to Mona. Now, recognizing that I'm one of the few speakers that stands between you and Jerry Irick and quite possibly breakfast, it's my pleasure to yield the podium to Professor John Roth.
My relation to Van is maybe a little bit different than some of you here in the room. Usually he's coming to meet you out somewhere. But my relationship with him involves getting into his car, usually to be taken somewhere. And Van's car is, I think, what I remember a lot about him. Strange things happen to people when you get into his car.
I want to drive it.
Well, I'll get to that in a minute. The first thing you have to watch for when you get into Van's car is the music. Because one of Cliff McLeod's pernicious effects on Van is, I think, that he keeps pushing these weird Scottish folk song tapes onto him, and George has learned to love these things, and so you won't be in the car very long until you start hearing weird sounds coming out of the music system there. And this is all intended to relax someone before you're being taken out to speak to an alumni association meeting or wherever it is that George has you ticketed for that particular occasion. So that's a big help, George. Thanks a lot. Great music that I never would have otherwise heard. I'm really grateful to you for that. John's already commented about the jokes that Van inflicts on people. They're almost as bad as the music. But I've encountered another part of Van that really is kind of lethal, and that's his curiosity. He's full of questions. And these are big questions. He thinks when he gets a philosopher in the car that somehow the philosopher is supposed to know the answers to these questions. And George is kind of a religious person, so whenever I get in the car, I usually have to, fend off questions about God and evil and, these heavy subjects. And some of the times I'm too tired to even think about those things, Van. And you kept hitting me with all those questions all the time. I love you for it. But the questions and the jokes and the songs, it's really almost too much. You're really kind of a dangerous fellow. But Cliff has alluded to the fact that the other exciting thing about being in Van's car is that you're always going somewhere, but it's never quite sure where or what you may learn on the way. Now, I've been with him in various places. I remember one night Pete Welsh and I and Van were somewhere in Denver trying to find an alumnus's house. We drove around, I don't know how long, out on the outskirts of Denver. We finally got there, but it wasn't thanks to you. I don't know how we did it exactly, but we arrived. I don't think we heard any Scottish music on that. We probably would have if we had to drive longer. Then there was the time in Honolulu where I was regaled by George's war stories. He was stationed out there, I think, for a time. He's probably saved the United States. But, he remembers Honolulu as it was in 1943 or something like that. And so I heard a lot about that on the way somewhere. That was relaxing, too. And, I don't know, there's several other wonderful trips that we've taken to Santa Barbara and all the rest. It's been a lot of fun. But seriously, I think the reason we're all here is because I don't know of anyone that I've ever met who is more eager to serve people than Peter. And I've joked about these trips that we've taken together, but the thing that was memorable about them all was that George was really there to help the college, and on these occasions at least to help me. And you are a man with a tremendous touch for service that really, I think, is the reason why we're all here tonight. And that's no joking matter, and it's not anything to be taken for granted. And I'm sure thankful for all the times I've been in your car and everywhere else where I've had the privilege to be with you.
When I was told that this was supposed to be a roast, I had to give a lot of thought to the kind of things I would say. And I had a very difficult time, especially after I looked at the list of testimonials, seeing how I could compete with the characters that were coming before you, who were much more witty and able to tell things about George that I wouldn't know about. Every time I tried to set aside some time to think about these things, all I could come up with was the fact that here was a man, very beautiful, humble human being, whose character was characterized by dedication, loyalty, and commitment. And hard as I tried to come up with something that would be a little more on the side of levity, I could not dismiss these characteristics from my mind. So I said, why fight it? I will say what I think about George, and it might fit into this evening and it might not, but it comes from my heart. I thought about the Alumni Association, which very soon will be celebrating a 45-year, 45th anniversary. And George has served this association and this college for almost half of that period. And if we're proud of what this association has become, if we feel that we are doing a job that competes with any association in the country, we can thank our lucky stars that we have this good and humble servant, George Van Tubergen, on our side. Then I asked myself, why is it that this association has accomplished as much as it has in the few years that it's been in existence? And the one thing I came up with is the dedication that we have to the involvement of volunteers in the operation, the policy, and the conduct of this association. And I can stand here before you without any fear of contradiction in the knowledge that we have this type of association because of George Van Tubergen's commitment to that ideal. Then I tried to think of the characteristics that George represents that I admire most. And we've heard a lot of interesting references to his humor, and I admire that humor. And I think this humor has stood George in good stead all these years through many difficult times, not only with the job of running the association, but in other difficult situations as well. But I think the thing that I admire most about George is his abiding faith in God. A faith which is demonstrated in all of his relationships with every one of us, and a much, much larger audience that we're not aware of. George, in essence, is the Good Samaritan. He goes out of his way to give a helping hand to anybody and to everyone when he feels there is a need. I don't know how many cheery notes he's written to alumni when they needed to be acknowledged for some accomplishment, or they were in need of some condolences of some nature, but I can assure you that they are many. George is a shining light that shows the way the rest of us and those who follow us can follow in the conduct of the affairs of this Alumni Association. And I'm just darn proud, George, to have been associated with you all these years, and I know that this college owes you a great debt of gratitude for bringing this Alumni Association to where it is today. God bless you, Betty, and have a marvelous time in your retirement.
George, I'm here to, as I always have been, here for you, to help you. When you get in the car with John Roth tomorrow, or the next time, just look at him right in the eye and ask him, to remember everything is to remember nothing. What does that mean? That should get you to Cucamonga or you know, you all will get there, and you know you're getting old when the young girls call you sir. You know you're getting old when those little bushes on your golf club golf course that you know are 150 yards from the green are large trees. But you really know you're old when George comes up and says, I'd like you to meet my granddaughter. Actually, I was George Van Tubergen's worst nightmare. When we were hired in the 1960s, I had just come out of the service, flying helicopters, young hotshot armed helicopter pilot, teaching gunnery when it was not very interesting and it hadn't really started. And to make just matters even worse, I had just been accepted to work for Coldwell Banker, which at that point was a very prestigious and small firm. I think we had maybe 3 offices down here. If we had that many, maybe 100 brokers. And it was, I mean, it was a really conservative firm, and it was tough to get into. I mean, it was so conservative that Mr. Coldwell and Mr. Banker would not let us in those days take off your jacket coat because they thought only car dealers took off their car. But it was really, I mean, we're talking boxer shorts, starched boxer shorts type of conservative. So here I was, a 1960 Master of the Universe, rolling in, starting up on my path, trying to validate Rucker's Peter Principle in the Alumni Association. And George, a loving father, a scout dad, a leader, had to work with me because he was given the job to do it and he had to work with me. It was the ultimate challenge. And it was a challenge that, if you really put it in perspective, that he faced. What are you going to do with Phil Cutting? For those of you like me, it was the best I can say, as I said, I'm just sitting here, is how do you talk about, you don't talk about his jokes. You think of him as a scout leader. You think of him, those of you who may remember, it used to be called the Scout Oath, honest, brave, reverent. Not now. It's the modern scout, it's the scout law. A scout is trustworthy, a scout is loyal, a scout is helpful, courteous, kind, cheerful, obedient, thrifty, and reverent. Reverent. These things are all George Van Tubergen. Trustworthy. I remember one early phone night. I'm on the phone and George had just come up, was working on phone nights now. He was moving into our deal. And I'm on the phone with an alum, and the alum's going along, and I'm making my pitch, and I'm going along and telling him this, and he stops me and says, now, Phil, what did I give last year? And there was nothing on the card. And I said, well, I think you gave $200-300. I look up and here I see George Blanche. And being a good salesman and a new Master of the Universe, I didn't say a word. The guy says, oh, well, really? I guess so. So I'll go up to the next level. I said, thank you very much. We gossiped a little more. I hung up. George came over to me, thunderstruck. He said, Phil, how could you do this? You lied. You did. That's a violation of a trust. George is trustworthy. By the way, I might mention that alum now is a big giver and a member of the Res Publica Corps. But I don't ever say, if I don't know anymore, I don't say, I'd say 500 or something. Loyal. In 1976, as president of the Alumni Association, the admission of women was the issue of issues. And of course, during a big meeting, I was railing on about, such things as the next thing you know, that women get in, they'll actually be living in Wolford Hall. The men won't be able to walk from room to room in their undershorts. They wouldn't be able to swear or yell obscenities across the quadrangle, do all sorts of male bonding, and all that secret men's stuff. I mean, the women belong in the kitchen, not in the boardroom. Why didn't George understand? Why did the administration force about us? Why are we doing this? And there were several other things that I'm sure Jack and those who were much wiser than I was at the time, being the master of the 1960 universe, in their wisdom. And I went on, and then finally, and as things slowed down a little bit, George came up to me and said, now, Phil. And, only George can do this. I mean, he learned, he worked me pretty well. He said, now, Phil, you know it would be in the best interest of the school to have women. They'd make a great addition. And it would be just terrific. And even you might get to like women at CMC. George, you're right. But I understand, though, that the women, far from stuffing and thwarting, they improved on some of our activities. And yes, I do like women CMC. I might add I like the ladies at Scripps a little better, one in particular, who says, kept me going all these years. Helpful. George is unfailingly helpful. For a person like me, he would call me to remind me of a study or some report I had to do. And of course, I give him the big move. George, done. It's in the mail. Be there. You know. An hour later, he'd be at my office saying, I've come to pick it up. I would say, George, just a minute. At the end of the thing, that George ended up keeping all the alumni activities in my administration going and moving and on time. Friendly. Now everyone thinks of George as friendly. But George, I'm going to tell you something that I've never told you, and this is the friendliest I think I've ever seen you. We have meetings downtown. There used to be a libation parlor down in the basement, or the first floor of the Hilton, called the 7th Street Bar, which for the masters of the universe at Coal Bank at that time was a big deal, and we'd all go down there. So one night after we had a board meeting or some meeting, and George was starting out, but he said, come on, George, let's come on, have a drink. Well, he hated that. But he'd do it because he wanted to get with the boys and bail bond. And so we went in there, and we'd sit down at the table and have a good time, and he'd have his Coke or whatever it was, and as we got in there, he said, I'll buy you guys a drink. No, George, we'll buy it. He said, well, I'll go get it. So we're sitting here, and he walks up to the bar, and he orders a drink. Well, now, right next to him, some might call an industrial debutante. Some might call a lady of suspicious virtue. Some might call just someone sitting there at the bar. Started talking to George, and George, wait a minute, no, George Benjamin, Claremont Men's College, we're talking cheerful, courteous. He's going down, cheerful, talking to her, and she's having one, and I'm sitting here, oh my God. Please, and as I said, George we'll talk about this later, but I said, God, sure enough, thank you, here's my card, I'm the Claremont Men's College, now that's being cheerful. Or friendly, I'm sorry, that's friendly. Courteous. Courteous would fit in the other deal. There was a time when he came to me in fundraising, and he said, Phil, I think this was the next year, and a woman at one of the classes in the first class would come to him and say, George, I want to be on the phone night. George, and he was all enthusiastic, came up to me and said, Phil, this is great. One of our first women, want to call and be on our deal. George, are you crazy? Are you going to let a woman, particularly in the first year, get on the phone? Can you imagine those guys our alums sitting at home in his t-shirt and drinking beer, watching television, being interrupted by a girl asking him for money? Well, this is not what George wanted to hear. And more than that, because as I understand it, this girl, this alum, or at that time she was a new student, didn't transfer to Claremont to major in knitting. We're talking heavy duty. So he goes, but sure enough, but George was George, ever the courteous, goes back, talks to her. And in George's own way, he smoothed it over, and she gave me just a slight tongue lashing about my sexist attitudes. And Claire, I hope wherever you are, you're running a company right now and giving a lot of money to the school. The kindness. I remember one time, and that really I thought, again, master of the universe, swimming with sharks, all that. An alum really went after George. He was sort of not too happy with what George was doing, which was not right. And the alum was not particularly, I had some doubts about him. But anyway, and I said, George, am I true? Cut this guy off at the knee. You gotta get him. I mean, you don't need him. He's got nothing for you. You can get him. Just drop a few things about his reputation to kill him. Wipe him out. George always spoke very well, never had any animosity, and always said nice things about this individual. With George, the glass is not only half full. The glass, I don't think that George has ever seen a glass that was not filled to the brim to this day. George is truly a kind man. Obedient, we all know obedient stories. I have the one that I said is always, he called me, he said, Phil, I need this thing today, it's late, you gotta get it to me, you gotta do it. I said, George, all right, I'll meet you halfway, I'll meet you at Denny's and Cucamonga, and just I'll be there at 2 o'clock. Well, as most of you know, my Greenwich Mean Time and me are not too good, and I got kind of delayed a little bit, and I called the office, the alumni office, and they said George had left, and oh my God. And so I said, well, and got through my meeting, and I started thinking, well, should I get there? I'm an hour late. I said, well, I better. I drove out there, and sure enough, an hour and a half later, here's George, looking not so good after 85 cups of coffee. But George was there, waiting for me to do the business we had to do. George said he'd be there, he was there, and I always hated you for it, because you're always there. Cheerful. Cheerful. Again, we're talking, George is the epitome of cheerful. I remember one time after a meeting, we were sitting around and I got to railing about a deal that had gone south, and it was a big deal in that time. I was starting on the business, and then talked about the ethics of real estate and the people around it, and I was probably the last big deal. But anyway, so we were going along and browsing, and George, again, is nice. Now Phil, things are going to be all right. And just don't worry about it. I'll take care of everything. Why don't you go home and have a nice dinner with Evie, and tomorrow we'll all be better. Well, of course, I really wanted to hear that. You know, there's a guy telling me my world's falling around behind me, and I got some guy telling me, go home, be nice, be nice. I mean, I really did. So I did. I went home, surprised Evie. Said, what are you doing home so early? And you know what? I went to the office the next day. There was a phone call. The guy had changed his mind. He was going to do the deal. Cheerful? George is cheerful. Thrifty? Thrifty. I mean, I don't mean to say, but I'll tell you what thrifty means to me. And George Van Tuber, we're having a big meeting, and you know how I don't know if you do it anymore, but back when I was president, I mean, we were talking big deals. We had big board meetings. We all came in. And we didn't take our coats off. I mean, we were talking heavy duty, talking big money. We're going to make big money for the school, and all these big things. And George, this one evening, was responsible for bringing the food and drink, and I see him over here, and he brings, I look over, the bottles and the cans and all the food have little white labels with blue deals that say Ralph's on it. Little white, kind of, I said, didn't say anything. I said, wait a minute. So like, George, don't you understand? We're talking big deals here. This is a Dom Perignon, Great Groupon, CNC as a group. We don't do Ralph's, funny little labels with Ralph labels. George, with his usual plum, said, Phil, now this college needs some money, and we'll save you the money. So for the rest of the year, we ate with those funny little white and drank out of those funny little bottles with white little Ralph's labels. I just hope, now that you're retiring, George, maybe we can finesse Linda and go to brand labels now. Brave. If any of you have seen Dancing with Wolves, and Kevin Costner was out there in the middle of the Pawnee Nation, going on by himself out there, you'd know a little bit about how the bravery of George Van Tuber, when he'd go with me into the dark, mysterious, and terrible places that I'd make him go to talk about CMC stuff. He'd look around and he'd say, Phil, I've never been in a place like this. And I'd say, George, we're only in the Turf Pub Bar of Santa Anita. That was George. Clean. Clean. If he had hair and was about 5 feet taller, he would be the Mr. Clean. I didn't break him down much, though. We were talking about when he was, I think in his first year as executive director, we hit a new record of alumni giving, $25 or $50 in those days. And he says, damn, that's good. So I got him. But to be around me is always tough anyway. So I did get him, it's hard not to become jaded, but I did get him to be a little bit. Took his Arctic white down to eggshell white spots. And I really did. One time I got him to drink a grasshopper, and I really think you like that grasshopper drink. And I'll admit it, I think you did. Reverend. Now, as I said, I was his project. A man of God and a great churchman. He spent his life trying to reform me. I mean, he would always give me these little cards that all the time. I mean, he's saying, the Lord will provide. Believe in him and he shall reap the rewards. Keep the faith. And in my true master universe thing, I said, when you'll give me the Lord's phone number and my banker can call him and tell him how much support he'll give me, I will tell you how much I believe. But in all these years, I mean, George has never stopped tonight. He's probably going to grab me. But I also do know that George is comforted and secure in his religion and his reverence. We were truly an odd couple over the years, but I urged George to take the director's position for the Alumni Association. I was pleased and proud to give him the award for the honorary alum in 1976. And I also was gratifying that, for me personally, when all the rhetoric is over, that George Van Tubergen has had a lifelong pursuit of the traditional values, family, God, and his fellow man. And they really do work. And George, I know one thing. I actually know two things. One, that Leo DeRocher was wrong. Nice guys do finish first. And the second thing I know is that God blesses you. Thank you. Here we are.
We always begin in class by giving out administrative announcements, so I have two. Breakfast is ordered. And two, class lectures are 50 minutes. So if anyone has a need to go to the restroom, I suggest you do it right now. And be prompt. Now, you've heard all kinds of marvelous things about George, I'm sure. But I guess my role tonight is I am the heavy. Because when this evening was planned, Kevin and Jim and a whole bunch of other people said, we're going to ask all of the alumni and friends and everyone else we can find to write in letters to George. And it's your responsibility to come in and tell what the true story of George is, what they say. Now, I received 3,700 letters, believe it or not. And I looked at them, and I looked at the ones that could cause divorces, and I threw them out. I looked at the ones that could destroy careers, and I threw them out. I looked at the ones that were flattering to George, and I threw those out. I looked at the ones that could harm my relationship with my wife. I threw those out. And I finally up about this one. So now I want you to pay attention, because this is the true story about George. George, have you felt good at this point? I mean, is it giving you a nice warm feeling that people love you and care for you and respect you and all those good things? Good. And Betty, have you sat there and shared in this? Okay, well, here comes the truth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read some of these things, and I'm going to identify them. So those people lurking in the back here that wrote these onerous things cannot hide. I guess I'll probably start with Bill Woods. Some of these letters are enormously long, because a lot of things that George did, but I'll just give you excerpts. However, whenever it appeared that some promise I had made was about to be left unsatisfied, at the very last moment you always came through with just the right touch to salvage the situation. Made it look like it had never needed salvaging in the first place, and permit me to cover myself with a glory, having once again come through in the pinch. Yet, all the time that you were doing this, you would refuse to take any credit for your having been the catalyst that permitted it all to happen. And finally he goes on to say, on behalf of myself and Rebecca, I express our best wishes to you in your retirement. You made it possible for me to achieve the things that I did as president of the Claremont McKenna College Alumni Association, and you made it easy to look good doing so. You always have friends among the alumni of Claremont McKenna College who will miss you. It was hard to find one like that, but I managed to do it. I had one from Gib Johnson. I thought it was interesting. His comment was, believe me, and this was, as you know, the Alumni Association asked for contributions. Gib says, believe me, no check was ever written as fast as this one was. And Gib, I checked with John, and he says you're 3 months late on your pledge. Bill Barrington. I remember many times you and Betty drove down to Orange County functions, no matter how small the turnout. Well, some chapter presidents are better than others. Well, things have changed over the years due to your patience, persistence, and enthusiasm. Now our Alumni Association is prospering as a direct result of your efforts. And my comment, if you will. Of course, the fact that Bill and Bonnie personally doubled the size of the Barrington membership in the Alumni Association didn't hurt at all. Wayne Slavitt. We all know Wayne. Who doesn't know Wayne? Who doesn't love Wayne? Is Wayne easy to love? Yeah, good, okay. Wayne, you have done countless deeds to make me look good. Boy, it takes countless, too. Remember the Alumni and Residence Program? How about the help you gave me with the student relations area? The two of our more successful programs, incidentally. Your wealth of knowledge will be sorely missed at CMC. That is the tangible side of you, Van. What I'll miss more is your terrible sense of humor. Those awful jokes. And then in parentheses, it was hard to read his writing. I think it said, promise me you will write a book of jokes. But it might well have said, promise me you won't write a book because his handwriting is so bad. As you leave CMC, please always remember that you touched our lives in such a special way. You're a legacy to live on with those of us who knew you. I only hope that when I retire, so many feel as warmly about me as we do about you. Well, wouldn't it be nice if we felt that warmly today, before you retire? I love one. Bob Garrett, so you have been so great for CMC, and I believe that you couldn't be replaced by 5 people. Well, I can assure you, don't worry, Bob. Jack will never do that. I remember one night at the Balboa Bay Club when your car broke down. I fiddled with it a while, and why is everything about Van Carr related? You know, there was Lee Iacocca, Henry Ford, and George Van Tubergen. The order is wrong, but the concept's right. I fiddled with it a while, and finally got it started. Both of us were amazed. Then I have one here from Roger Brandon. Roger, of course, was a long pitcher, as you might recall. He was a starter, and his letter was the same. It's a very long story, and at times I'm going to have to bleep out certain words. Because this was one that I would have thrown out because of potential, family problems and that, but I thought it was going to. Basically, the story goes something as follows. George and a couple other faculty, administrating people at CMC came up to a meeting in Santa Clara with the alumni, and when they did that, for some reason they showed up about 4 hours late when all the food was gone. And I take excerpts from Roger, but one of them is, in my estimation, Van's effectiveness has resulted in large part because he is a people person, a quality which far outweighs his occasional logistical mishaps. For example, if Van were the senior Allied commander of Operation Desert Storm, I am confident that, as of this writing, February 21st, 1991, he would have already charged Saddam Hussein into surrender, thereby alleviating the need for Van to employ his backup plan to lead the Allied troops into a full-scale assault on Alumni. And then he wraps up with this story about all these people arriving late, and I'm sure it's not true in names, and so I do accept the bleeps. The evening was certainly enjoyed by all, and finally came to an end as Dean Blank, prone in the back seat, Dean Blank in the front passenger seat, though not visible behind the dashboard, and Van, ever triumphant, behind the wheel, pulled out of the parking lot and proceeded due east for the return from San Jose to San Francisco. Then I had one that really kind of shocked me. It really did. It started as follows. Dear Van, we can't tell you how delighted we were when we heard you were finally going to retire. All of these years, you have made us miserable with your endless alumni activities. Sometimes it seemed that we spent all of our time just keeping track of your events. Why didn't you understand that alumni directors are supposed to contact alumni only for money and not waste their time on developing friendships and personal relationships? What did caring about people ever have to do with an alumni organization? Finally, you are gone. And maybe we can relax a bit and not have to explain why everything you do seems to work so well. Note at the bottom it said, the alumni directors at Scripps, Harvey Mudd, Pomona Pitzer, and just about every other college in other nations. And finally, Gary Dukenbile, who's sitting in the back. Can't get out of this. And, well, maybe he can if I can't find it. Gary, you escaped. No, you didn't. And I'll report this. As a past vice president of chapters for the Alumni Association, I can honestly say that without you and your staff, I would never have made it. You continually organized and led me to the proper decision. You got me out of many jams, and your wise experience provided me with valuable insight. I think patience has to be one of your greatest virtues. Many people have come and gone through the years at CMC, but you have been a constant. Not only a constant, but you've always been the person who comes through when someone is in need. Van, you have a legacy of greatness. Your shoes will never be filled, and you are not replaceable. Have an outstanding time in retirement and life after Claremont. You are then, without a doubt, one of my heroes. And finally, my own vignette. I could tell many stories of Van and I traveling from alumni group to alumni group. But I probably met Van, with the exception maybe of Jack, possibly you, I'm not sure. First, because I had first encountered Van when he was a member of a team that came in to do a fundraising consulting project for us. You probably remember that. And on this fundraising consulting project, there were, in the structure of military command, there are generals, and then there's colonels, and there's majors, and captains, and lieutenants. But who really runs the troops? The sergeants do. And in this consulting team, there were a bunch of generals and colonels, and there was a sergeant, and a damn good sergeant. And I had the opportunity to work with them because they wanted to do a survey of alumni, and since I was the resident statistician, they asked me to support them, and I met all of them. I met the colonels, and I met the generals, and I met the captains, and I met the sergeant. When the chips got on the table, out of that whole very talented consulting team, who were we smart enough to hire? We hired the sergeant. And believe me, there's probably no greater role in life than being a sergeant. You've been a great one, an honored one. It's been my pleasure to know you. Betty, every time I see George do something, I know that you're right behind him helping him do it. Now, if you want to, I can probably make the other 3,500 letters available too. But it's been fun. Thank you very much for allowing us.
Now we have a real treat. Pat Morhorst in the alumni office has written what I think is an outstanding and clever song, and it's going to involve getting the President's Choral Group up here. I think we need to get you together as a group, so let's give them some applause and get them up here. This is, I guess, the past, present, and soon-to-be President's Choral Group. Now, we want to encourage those of you who are not up here to join into the chorus as we go along here. I'm sorry, if you're from Claremont, you can only have an A.
jokes that you tell us are corny, and some are a dozen years old, and still we enjoy them immensely because of the way that they're told. You get such a kick when you tell them. Sometimes you laugh harder than we. You think that we'll soon be without them. That's something we don't want to see. So don't go, don't go. Oh man, please don't leave us. Don't go, don't go. Don't go, don't go. Oh man, please don't leave us. Don't go. Your memory has always amazed us. Recalling each name was a trick, 'cause there are so many alumni, so many made from which to pick. We've all seen your little toy soldiers when we've been on campus to roam, and some of us have been invited to play more games with you at home. Don't go, don't go. Oh man, please don't leave us. Don't go, don't go. Don't go, don't go. Oh man, please don't leave us. Don't go. We realize that you're getting weary and feel that it's time you must go. You've worked for a great many years now, but there's something you need to know. We'll all miss you terribly, Van dear. Your jokes and your smile and your touch. So promise us you will return, Van, for meetings, reunions, and such. Please come back, come back. Oh, promise us, Van, you'll come back, come back, come back, come back. Oh, promise us, Van, you'll come back, come back.
John has something that he'd like to, it's not in the middle of the program, but it's certainly something that is worth taking the time out to do on a special basis. So, John, if you will.
I'm sure there are those of you in the audience who believe that I don't do anything but work for Claremont, but I actually work for LA County government. And, during the course of my work with LA County government, I do get billable hours billed with. Okay? During such an occasion, I had a chance to request the proclamation for the gentleman we're honoring tonight. However, I was surprised when I went to the office, with special referrals and all. Oftentimes it's pretty difficult if they don't know who the person is or what the person's done that's worthy of being recognized by the County Board of Supervisors. So in the case of Van, not only did they know who he was, but that Claremont McKenna College actually exists, but they were hoping that aside from various issues related to reapportionment and redistricting, that there were no serious CMC alum considering running for office. I mean, they figured that we would pretty much stay Machiavellian as we've been. So when I mentioned that I wanted a proclamation for George Van Tubergen, they said, well, hey, without a doubt, we'll have that for you within 24 hours. And as a result of that, I have a proclamation here from Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors to George Van Tubergen. George, if you please come to the podium. This is in commemoration of this evening, and it's from the chairman of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors in appreciation and recognition for your dedicated service to the affairs of the community and for civic pride demonstrated by numerous contributions that you've made to citizens of Los Angeles County and the world. Thank you. George Van Tubergen, on behalf of Supervisor Mike and Congress.
Next on the program is the presentation from the chapter presidents. Bill Prevot will come out. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Oh, well, the first name of Breck, I'm used to that.
Van, I'm tonight representing the past and present chapter presidents of the Alumni Association tonight. And it's a real privilege. I've known Van for a number of years, and like many of you, I'm always amazed at his energy, his vitality, and his enthusiasm. He's one of the few people that I know that can cajole, plead, beg, push, and shove, and you just don't get mad at him when he does it. It's a trait that I wish I had. We all owe Van a great deal of thanks for the diversity of events that he has forced us, pleaded with us to hold, particularly here in Southern California. It's really been fantastic. And Van, we thank you for your commitment and your involvement over the years. I'm also, as mentioned earlier tonight, I'm also amazed that somebody like Van can show such an interest in god-awful jokes. It is true. It is amazing. You're always aware of the ones coming when Van says, "Did you hear the one about?" I don't know how in the world he has the nerve to tell somebody groaners. But this is your night, Van, and I have a groaner or two that you ought to write down, because that's what you do when you hear a joke. Betty and Van were reading the Sunday paper last week, and Van pulled out an article and said, "Did you hear about this ex-World War II Korean Vietnam hero that's living in an Alaska backwoods cabin all by himself on a Social Security check?" They said, "No." He said he was married in 1948, and after the reception, his wife went to the bank, stole his savings, and disappeared, and he's never seen her since. I said, "That's just terrible." And to make it worse, she just went to court, sued him for divorce, and the judge awarded him $1,000 a month. Awarded her $1,000 a month. And Van said, "Isn't that terrible?" And Betty said, "My God, that is terrible. How can that poor woman live on $1,000 a month?" Van, if you could come up here right now, I do have some gifts here from the Alumni Association. There is one I'd like to, Cliff, if you could stand up, please, for a second and model this again. You seem to enjoy it. we have placed on order an exact replica.
A little bit smaller.
Smaller that will arrive very shortly. And when it comes to 8.5 by 11 posters, the two of them together. The second item we want to present tonight is a retirement keepsake, which includes a lot of letters and things that are still together. Right? And the third item is a very special item, which we think you'll very much enjoy, and we'd love to have you open up here.
I'm going to guess it's a CNC pen. It's a CNC pen.
See, it wasn't just a code after all. So now for the presentation of the gift, it says here, we'll have Jim Moore come up.
When the alumni learned that Dan was retiring, we really universally wanted to do something very special for Dan. And obviously we wanted to have a party like we're having tonight. This has really been terrific. In fact, I'm kind of losing my voice for laughter. But we did a lot of thinking about what might be special. And we had a lot of ideas, and some that were good ideas, and some that maybe weren't so good of ideas. And one of the ideas we had, we knew that Dan liked to ride around philosophers and so forth, and maybe we should get him a new car, maybe a bigger car, a nicer car. And so we went out and passed the hat around, and I guess there are more Scotsmen at CMC than I do. And Van, we managed to get you this studio. Wanted to get you a Porsche, but it's, I didn't get a lot of philosophers in there at least. The chapter presidents obviously just did a very nice thing by giving the kilts and the ring and so forth. And that is very, very nice, very wonderful gift. But, you know, let's face it, other than West Hollywood and the Tower Restaurant, where else you can wear kilts? We weren't exactly sure what to do or what might be practical, and we hadn't had much luck with the car. So we finally had a brainstorm, something that really made sense, something that really we thought would be wonderful for Van. And the first thing we did is we went out to the past presidents and asked them to seed a fund, and then we went to the rest of the alumni body and asked them to also contribute. And Van, this time the response was really overwhelming. It wasn't anything like the car, it was really overwhelming. And we all know there's been a lot of talk tonight about Scotland, and Van has a trip planned there to go to Scotland very shortly. And we as the alumni wanted to be the ones to send you there, and we also wanted to send you their very first class. So if you come up here, somewhere up here is a big token of our gift here in the form of a check.
Somebody's taking the check.
Here's a token of check that there is a real check that will be presented. I got a little bit nervous when I didn't see any dollar Yeah, we just wanted to say that congratulations. Thank you for everything you've done for us. You've been terrific. We love you and have a great trip.
Well, now we have a few remarks from Jack Stark. And so to come up, Jack.
I won't pull this out again. So. My remarks will be few. I can't resist. So Phil Cuddy said people are concerned about Phil Cuddy. I remember as a student at an RA, for years I've been concerned about it.
Phil was bad news.
Long at the top.
I had the privilege for a few years of having the job that Van so ably served for a couple of decades. I wasn't good enough to hold it for very long, and the college needed to get rid of me and follow the peer principle. Moved me on to financial director, and I wasn't very good at that either. And I did placement profile, and I did physical plan profile, and finally got to be president, and there wasn't anything else they could do with me. So that's the essence of my career. I did want to say a few things seriously. Colleges, and particularly alumni associations, are made up only of people. There is no great technology. There is no great physical assets. It's just people. And the person that can generate and motivate and work with those people is what alumni associations need. And this association has been extremely fortunate to have a man who is extremely upbeat, very people-oriented, worked with this association, and I do believe built one of the most effective, and hard-working, dedicated alumni associations in the country. Van has been made an honorary alumnus. He has been given a CMC ring, and this last week, the faculty voted to award Van an honorary bachelor's degree from Claremont McKenna College, so he will this has ever been done, and so Van will not be just an honorary alumnus, he indeed will be an alumnus of this college. Van, congratulations.
We'll call you on the phone now.
So we need to get Van up here, but I'd like him to come up to us all singing for He's a Jolly Good Fellow. So if we could just start off. We have our pianist again. So begin. For he's a jolly good
I should have believed him, but I got to thinking that he was a guy who engineered the Jack Stark Rose. But they kept me silence, and had a few little things started to become apparent. Just yesterday, Pat told me that it was necessary for me to wear the tux for this function that was coming up. So I believed it, but I also started in a little bit. And then when Kevin came by this evening, directions to the jobs, and thought all those things. He says, how do you get to the Tower Restaurant? Well, I knew something was up, and of course, when I walked into it, it was a big surprise. And I'm glad that I didn't know about this to the extent that it transpired here this evening, because I would have been up almost every night trying to put together the appropriate things to say on occasion like this, and it would have been beyond me. I can't do it this evening. Weeks of preparation. I want to thank you all for the things that you've said. I know that you're expecting the truth in some cases here. I used to believe I was a humble man. In fact, when I was a child in Sunday school, my Sunday school teacher once gave me a blue ribbon for my humility. Unfortunately, she took it away from me the next Sunday when I wore it. goes to show you that I really am a proud person. And I am very proud. I'm very proud that the Lord allowed me. To be associated with this college all these years. And in spite of all the things that have been said about me, let's face it, folks, this is a symbiotic relationship. There isn't anything that I ever did that I could do alone. It's always been all of us working together. And I have received absolutely just as much, and maybe a lot more, from you folks than you ever had from me. So I'm really of the mind that my family should be formed as part of you, part of the entire association, the school. I don't know which one of these gifts is will mean the most or means the most to me, either is Ginger's little tie here. The all expenses check there or the car. I just can't tell you the season. I'm grateful for all of them. And I do feel that before I wind down my remarks here this evening that I should answer some of your questions because they've been raised. One, did I know that this was a surprise? Only to the extent I knew something was coming off. You know, I'm not that good. just because I went to UCLA. And the other thing, you know, how do you tie the bagpipes and all of that with Van Tubergen? Well, the truth of the matter is that at the time that my grandfather came over here, he was a Mac Tubergen, but there were a lot of ethnic jokes about Scots at that time, and he didn't want to be identified as one, so he changed the name to Van. I just happened to have a Scottish grandmother on my father's side, and as a result of Cliff McLeod's brainwashing and all that, I've taken more to that side of the family than any other. Originally, I was identifying very closely with Ernie Dow, whose mother was Ukrainian, as my mother was, and they even exchanged traditional Russian-East greetings this evening. But I'm going to Scotland for the first time in my life. I'm thrilled to pieces. And it's a double blessing because we're also going to Holland, and I've never been there, and that's where my paternal grandfather came from. And I don't think we'll have time to visit the little town of Tubergen on the German border, but we'll see enough of Holland, I hope, in 4 days that we'll remember all the line. And then before we fly back to the United States from our trip to Scotland, we have to return to Holland, and I'm going to be able to say, yes, I've been to Holland twice. Well, I know your stomachs are growling, you're ready for breakfast now. You know, I want to say thank you to each one of you by name, but if I did that, I would miss someone, and I wouldn't want to do that. I appreciate everyone who's come out here this evening, everyone who's had a part in this great conspiracy, this great deception. It's wonderful. I love it. And I won't leave you. I'll be around. Believe me. Thank you so much.
Helpmeet, Betty, who
receiving Social Security, and most of my paycheck for the remaining months that I'll be living on the payroll is already in hand. It isn't my job that's at stake or anything like that. And so I can say this freely, that none of these things would happen in our association if it were not for Pete Welch and Jack Stark really supplying us with the wherewithal to do the things that you presidents and the board that work with you have plotted for the course for the association. Jack, to my knowledge, has never balked at any of the exorbitant things we've asked him to do.